Men are always talking about how things should be and what should happen and what someone should do. And then they get mad because that's not what's happening. But in many cases, I don't think that they worked out all the steps that it would take to get from the way things are to the way that things should be, or the way they think they should be. The work of living involves cleaning up a lot of messes. And, sometimes they're your own messes, but a lot of the times they're not. And there are guys out there who say that whatever happens to you is your fault, but it isn't. And that's going to take ownership of your situation, but plenty of things will happen in life that are completely out of your control. It's what the ancients called fate, and it's also why people believe in luck. An early Greek philosopher named Heraclitus wrote that the thunderbolt steers all things. And there are many ways to interpret that, but storms will come out of nowhere. I ran an event last weekend, and the weather report was wrong by 3 hours. People still don't have, they still can't predict everything. There are going to be unforeseen plagues and earthquakes and tornadoes and hurricanes. Something can fall off a truck and smash your windshield. Someone can invent something that makes your job obsolete. It happens all the time. And yes, sometimes the worst people come into power and the worst ideas become popular. You rarely get to start working from how things should be. In fact, if you did, there wouldn't be any work to do, right? Congratulations, everything's perfect. Sounds pretty boring. You have to begin work by acknowledging the reality of the situation before you. And if you want to change that situation, you need to come up with a plan to move things closer to how you think that things should be, or how you want them to be. So when someone wants to sell me on how things should be, I ask to see their flow chart. What is the actual sequence of steps required to achieve the outcome that you want? What challenges are you going to face, and how are you going to handle them? What resources are required to get this done? There's an old South Park episode in which gnomes present a business plan which starts with collect underpants, and the goal is profit. Phase 2 of the plan, which is essentially the whole plan, is a big question mark. And then there's an older cartoon familiar in math and science circles in which the second step of a mathematical derivation is scribbled out as, then a miracle occurs. So how are you getting from collect underpants to profit? And what miracle needs to occur for you to get there? Let me see your flowchart. Work the plan out. A lot of people get fixated on things that they think should happen, but they fail to address substantial obstacles that are in the way. I may even agree with them about what they think should happen, but that doesn't mean that it's going to happen. And this is true in every area of life, but it seems to be especially true of politics. Now, people who truly understand politics understand that politics is the art of the possible. But 90% of the population seems completely unable to conceptualize the obstacles on the political landscape. They just want whatever they want. I see guys all the time saying things like, those people should be tried and hung. And, it sounds really tough to say that. Like, you're ready to make the hard, ugly decisions and say things that other men are afraid to say. In some cases, I probably agree with you. But realistically speaking, how does that get done? You're obviously not just going to go do it yourself, right? So what are the things preventing that from happening? And how are similar but less extreme propositions being received? And what does that tell you about the likelihood of your desired outcome? But because men aren't working out the flowchart, they just get mad because their totally out-of-pocket idea isn't being implemented. So to anyone serious, it sounds more like a tantrum than a rational proposal. And what's worse is that when you are obsessively vocal about an extreme, far-fetched outcome, you're more likely to be dismissed as an unserious person who is just venting. And that makes you less able to help your allies achieve an incrementally better step in the right direction. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't have ideals or some sense of how you really think things should be. Of course you should. However, an ideal is a direction, not a destination. A flowchart is also a really good way to evaluate your ideals themselves. You know, is human nature one of the obstacles you'd have to overcome for things to be the way that you think that they should be? People everywhere on the political spectrum have ideals that are totally inconsistent with thousands of years of data we have concerning human behavior. Has what you want ever happened or lasted very long? And if not, then why not? Now, if you're thinking that there is also a danger in being overly cautious or waiting to work out the perfect plan, then you're right. That can become a form of procrastination. Acting on an imperfect plan is usually better than waiting until you have worked out every last detail, but at least have some kind of plan that doesn't require a miracle to happen. The plan that works will also probably not be the plan that you started with. You'll have to update the plan as you proceed and the situation evolves. A good model for this process is John Boyd's OODA decision-making loop. OODA stands for Observe, Orient, Decide, Act. Actions produce responses that provide new information. New information requires reorientation, and new decisions will have to be made that lead to new actions. And then the loop repeats. This is true in business and grappling and even in personal relationships. Big changes are possible. I've seen them happen in my lifetime, and I've even been surprised a few times. I'm not one of these doomers who believes that nothing ever happens. But when change does happen, it generally happens because a lot of people work together to implement realistic incremental plans that laid the foundation for that change. No big changes happen because a bunch of people sat around complaining about how things should be. That's like saying, I should be a millionaire. Well, you could be, but you're going to need some kind of plan to get there that realistically acknowledges the obstacles that are in your way. Many of the problems we face today took years to create. We have inherited a big mess. And a lot of the things that happened should not have happened. Mistakes were made. But that's life. It's going to throw all kinds of things at you that are suboptimal, things that you didn't deserve or ask for. Cleaning up messes that you didn't create is as normal as dealing with bad weather. Some messes only require a dustpan, but if you're going to clean up a really big mess, you're going to need a plan. So, right now, pick one thing that you think should be different. Then sit down and write out all of the things that would prevent this thing from happening and what it would really take to get from how things are to how you think things should be. Be thorough, be detailed. And if you do this, you will have a better understanding of the problem that you're trying to solve. And you can, and you should, also do this for problems that you have in your own life. Work out the flowchart. I'm Jack Donovan. Stay solar.